Whether you keep them in your home or love to see them in theirs, these are the creatures that bring us all together.
Reptiles. We're going to be delving into the experiences of reptile lovers from around the block and around the world. This is the Reptile Talk Podcast. Boom! What is going on, everybody? This is Jeremy Turgeon from Brassman Reptiles.
And I'm Rob, and I'm keeping it real.
And we're kicking off 2022 with some previous audio issues that no longer happened. Woohoo!
Hey!
Thank God. Thanks to the wonderful IT work of our guest today.
Just saying.
He hooked us up. So thank you to everybody that's already here in the chat. We appreciate it. If you've never joined us for a live stream on YouTube, especially with Phil, just so you guys know, any super chats that come in today are going right to USARK. So feel free to hit us with a super chat, and we'll make that happen. So we're going to jump right into it. I'm going to bring Phil on right now, and we're just going to jump right into things. Boom. What's up,
Boom.
Phil? How's it going?
Howdy, fellas.
It's good to see you again.
You don't have to lie, Rob. It's okay.
I like seeing you. You're so handsome.
Yeah. 15 years ago, I had a shot at handsome.
Dude, that picture behind you is awesome, too. For the people on the audio, won't be able to see it, but it's a sweet, big reticulated python picture. That's cool.
Yeah. And there's no, what happened to the giant in your face USARK vertical banner that was there?
I don't know. I hung something else up this time. I had to change the background.
I dig it.
Yeah, swap it up.
Okay, so I want to jump right into it. So we wanted to start off this year talking with you, Phil, because we already know we're in for some nonsense. 2021 ended with a few things sneaking their way into our midst. So I guess let's recap with that stuff. What do we have already on our plate?
Yeah, so at the end of the year, actually on Thanksgiving Day, we issued an alert for a national bill. So this is going to affect, everybody across the country potentially. So it's what we call a Traveling Animal Act ban. And the animal rights groups who wrote this say that it's, targets circuses and tigers and elephants, things like that, and traveling circuses. But if you read it, it actually bans anyone from even taking a tortoise or even a small pygmy monitor into a classroom. So it's transporting any species listed. It's transporting that animal in any manner somewhere where it's going to be on some type of display. Some people argue it could possibly affect reptile shows. As it's written, we don't really see it affecting reptile shows, but it could pass, and then they could change a little bit of the language and even have an impact on reptile shows where people sell reptiles, not ones where they're doing educational programs.
Yeah, we faced something similar to this in Massachusetts, where they were saying that it was a ban on circuses because of blah, 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 blah. And then the wording that they had in it, any sort of public demonstration where an animal is doing something for entertainment. And so it was just worded so vaguely that, like, if you brought out a chameleon and said, look at its colors, it's entertaining people. And so they would have been banning educational programs where people are learning about these animals.
Yeah, and they get worded a little bit differently. That one in Mass it just had exotic animal. That would have covered everything non-native to Massachusetts. This one has a list of animals, but like it includes some stuff that's pretty common at these shows, including all monitor lizards and all tortoises. So how they think tortoises are any type of danger to anybody or mistreated if they got to take a 20-minute car ride, I don't know, but that's what it says. So, I mean, it doesn't have much of a chance of passing, but it's unfortunately it's gaining co-sponsors. I forget, last time I checked, it was up to 51 or 53 co-sponsors on the House bill.
Wow.
So, yeah, it could get a little bit of traction, so we're definitely watching it.
Oof. That's rough.
Yeah. And it also, correct me if I'm wrong, but it also has a companion bill. Is there a House bill?
Yeah, there's a Senate and a House bill. So, yeah, companion bill. Companion bill means that there's essentially the same exact bill in the House and the Senate. And the Senate bill only has the original sponsor, which is a senator from Arizona. But yeah, it's the house one that actually might get traction if one of these two gets traction.
Okay. So and I'll preface before we keep going, I'll preface by saying, like, if you're not already checking out USARK's website and you're not already getting their newsletter, you should go to usark.org and sign up for that newsletter. It's free and it's a wonderful way to stay in the know of what is going on. And it does an amazing job of spoon feeding you every bit of information you need, including with sample letters and draft letters that all you need to do is address and sign. And you can feel free to add your spin on it if you would like, but everything that needs to be said is already said in there. So he does a wonderful job of making sure you already have that info, so there's no excuses for not assisting.
It gets repetitive. I know we say the same thing on every show, but yeah, essentially the work's been done for you. Just go to usark.org and click on whichever action alert that you want to get involved in, which is hopefully all of them. But again, just click on it and it tells you who to send, who to contact, what to say. If there's a hearing, it says what the date and the time is, and everything's right there for you. So again, just usark.org. Check it out.
Yeah, I don't think people realize, even no matter how many times we have you on and we discuss this stuff, I don't think people realize that, like, it's that simple. Like, you've done the work for us all.
Yeah. And the more that we go, this first week of 2022 is probably we're gonna probably see a whole bunch of introductions like we did last year, right?
Yeah. So essentially, what we call legislative season is the same as tax season. They run about the same. So you're looking January through usually March. Sometimes we get some stuff in April and May, depending on the state. But each state has a different session that the legislators are going to the state capitol. Some go all year, but again, usually it's January through March is when we see the state bills proposed. So yeah, they'll be, if they're going to come, they'll be coming here soon.
Oof.
That's another reason why it's so important for people to sign up for the newsletters. Make sure they're checking out the Instagram and USARK Instagram, USARK Facebook, and the website as well, because we'll be posting updates as we go.
And the reason we had those, we'll talk about the other one next, but we had two kind of bigger ones at the end of the year. Obviously, one was a federal bill. So federal legislative session runs for 2 years. So they can be introduced anytime over those 2 years. So the first year of this session was 2001. The next one is 2022. So it could be introduced at the end of the year because it just carry over into 2022. And then the other one we had just a few weeks ago was a North Carolina, but it's not a legislative bill. It's a regulatory change. So with a regulatory change, those can happen anytime throughout the year because they don't go through the legislature. This one's actually going through North Carolina's Department of Natural Resources. So it's going through a state agency. So that can happen every year. If a state wildlife agency has that authority, they can introduce it without going through the legislature. And usually, I don't know why, but it does seem like the regulatory changes we typically get more the second half of the year rather than the first half.
That is an interesting trend. All right, so we've got North Carolina's on deck too. We've got quite a bit of nonsense in our midst, and of course, just in time for Rob and I to become new residents.
But now we can speak as constituents when we go to the meetings.
It's true. Yeah, it is true.
Yeah, so North Carolina, I mean, they're doing some changes, which is common for wildlife agencies to do. It wouldn't be too bad of a deal if there wasn't the ban on tegus. So North Carolina is looking to ban all tegus, so it's not just going to be black and whites. So this is they call themselves the Wildlife Resources Commission in North Carolina. Usually it's a DNR, most people call it, but same thing. But yeah, tegu ban's the big one. They will allow you to grandfather in, which means keep any tegus that you have. But if there's anybody who's doing any real business breeding tegus, they really need to get involved in this. I haven't heard from any, medium or larger tegu breeders in North Carolina. So if there are any, please contact USARK at info@usark.org. But yeah, certainly you got to get involved if you're in the business of tegus.
Yeah,
and it
this
could
one's
even
definitely
impact
big for
pet
sure.
stores and stuff too.
Say that again, Rob.
Oh no, I was just saying that this is going to probably affect pet stores as well, and people who are, even just vending shows in North Carolina. A lot of people are interested in tegus, and it feels like, not as many of those people are willing to show up and say something about it.
Yeah,
Unfortunately.
it's definitely a sad trend, to see the lack of, I don't want to say a lack of attention, because I've spoken to people who are quite aware of what's going on, but it just seems like there's a lack of willingness to go find the information, which again, Phil has done this amazing job of putting it all in one place.
Hmm.
Like, you just have to go to the website and you can find everything you need right there.
Yeah, it's all there. And on this North Carolina stuff, I mean, you've got 4 opportunities to speak to the agency. So there's 3 in-person meetings. I know, that can be hard to get away and get to those, but we have all those dates right there. The first one's coming up on January 11th. And then there's a virtual one too. So possibly the only good thing that came out of COVID is a lot of these agencies and legislators are doing some more virtual stuff, which gives people an opportunity who possibly couldn't get away from work or drive. Sometimes it's 4 or 5 hours, especially if you're down in Florida, where the state capital is Tallahassee, and everyone else is on the other end of the state. But, we have been having a lot more of these virtual opportunities to speak. So really, you don't have a reason. I mean, you could say that you can't get to one of the 3 in-person meetings, but then you got a virtual one that you can go to and speak your mind there and give them your opposition. So no excuses on this one.
Yep. Yeah, man.
Absolutely.
I wonder if we'll see as many people showing up. I'm really hoping that we do see people coming out for these ones. And then Jeremy, you've been in contact with people like Nick Lotini, and Josh Ortiz, and they were very involved with this. We've been trying to organize something to get people in the Carolinas a little bit more involved as well, right?
Yeah, 100%. So shameless plug. We just launched the Carolina Herpetological Society. That page is now active and available for people to go check out. And obviously, we wanted to be able to get keepers involved in every element of keeping reptiles, but that also includes being able to have a body of keepers in the Carolinas that are aware of what legislative / regulatory changes are happening in our 2 states, so people can head over there and check out what's going on and how they can be involved, learn the state laws and what's coming that may potentially change those. So yeah, we've got Nick Bettini, myself and Rob, Josh Ortiz, and a few other people involved in that. Because it needs to happen, because the herp societies that exist in the Carolinas right now are very native species based, and they don't necessarily care for the captive industry. So that was the intention of this creating this, was to give more of a focus to the captive side of reptiles. So, woohoo!
Hey, that's not a shameless
thing
plug.
to
That's
do.
awesome. That's awesome. Kudos to you guys. So
Yeah, we're trying. We're trying, man.
Yeah. Got to make some noise where there's no noise being made, man.
Yeah.
Sure.
Cool. Good to hear it.
So, so obviously, so the tegu ban is definitely the biggest weight with what we're seeing in North Carolina. But then there's this native species importation stuff. So can we elaborate a little bit more on that and what that changes that might already be in place?
Yeah, so the agent already requires importation permit, which it's important for people to understand what importation means too. A lot of people think importation is only if something's coming from Europe or China or Japan, being shipped internationally. And that's not the case when you're talking about these state laws. When a state talks about an importation permit, that just means importation into the state from anywhere. So that could be South Carolina, Montana, Texas. It could be any other state, and there's still an importation requirement. And the agency currently requires that for wild animals and wild birds. And then they're going to add to that native reptiles and amphibians. So for herps that are native to North Carolina, they're going to have this new importation permit requirement for those species. And we don't know exactly what they're planning to do with that. They're going to make it more accessible for some of the species that are common in trade, or what they're going to do. But I mean, the issue we see with this is who's going to think that you need a permit to bring an albino corn snake into North Carolina, or an albino eastern king snake or something like that. And the same for pet shops. I mean, pet shops really got to be aware of this, because those are, common pet shop species, and it could obviously cause some issues. So again, it's just, we hate to see something like that, where even if it's fairly easy for people to do, again, you don't want someone getting in trouble because they didn't know they needed something to import a snow corn snake, and they just wanted it as a pet, and then they're getting in all this big trouble from the state. So we'll have to see exactly where that one goes, but that is part of this new set of regs.
Yeah, I wonder if places like Petco and PetSmart have heard about this, because a lot of their common things that they sell are stuff that would be considered, anoles, corn snakes, things like that, even some turtle species, and that impacts their bottom line. So I wonder if it'd be worth reaching out to them, see if they know that this is going on.
Yeah, they should be aware, and I mean those stores, it's probably not going to be a huge deal for them if they have to comply with this, but again, they certainly need to be made aware of it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, even when we were talking about some of those things for Maine, they had representatives there that showed up because it does impact them, and the places like Maine, they even ban axolotls. Like, axolotls are not legal there, which is like, something that's very commonly sold in pet stores. And, once they make a little changes like this, because I think this one was mostly based on turtles for the native one. It had some other stuff on there too, but when I was looking through it, it looked like it had a lot of turtle species on it. And it'd just be easier for them to add more to it once they make that initial change,
Yeah, there is. So in the North Carolina reg, there is some changes to the turtle regulation too, but they already have a fairly extensive turtle regulation. So certainly turtle keepers in North Carolina should be aware of that. So this is really just adding some of the native species that are already prohibited or have restrictive regulation.
Yeah.
There's a lot. There's definitely a lot going on for North Carolina.
Yeah, and again, as Jeremy already said, just go to USARK. We got it broken down. We've got the main 5 points there, even page numbers on where to look to find this stuff, because it was, I forget if it was 100 pages, but it was close. I mean, it's dozens of pages, this. So again, it's broken down. It tells you where each section is and which page numbers to go to. So, because there's a lot of other licensing fee changes and stuff like that are in there. It's not just this herp stuff. It's pretty broad regulation change affecting hunting and fishing and all that stuff too. But again, we have the page numbers and you can go right to it.
See, look at that. Just another wonderful example of Phil spoon feeding you the information you need to know. Oh, man.
It's still a lot. I think that, but yeah, we made it as easy as possible.
No, and I think that's that really is important for people to know. Like, you've done, there is a lot, but you've done so much of the legwork already. I mean, just marking the pages is massive. I think the text is like well over 60 pages, and it's like, that's a lot to read through. So it's wonderful to be like, oh, hey, you only need to look at, pages 12 through 13 or whatever. You don't need to read, 7 chapters of regulation jargon that is just going to make you want to go grab a shot of whiskey and reconvene the next day.
Hey, a couple shots may help before you dive into this. Just don't be sending out emails after a few shots. It's okay to read it. It's okay to read it a couple shots in, but yeah, hold off on the email until the next day after some coffee.
There you go. Sober up and send the emails.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I just want to give a shout out to everybody that's in the chat. We appreciate it. Everybody who's watching, we definitely appreciate it. Please do us a favor and share this video. We always want to get as much information about what is happening out to people. Jen Davis is in watching, which is quite wonderful. She just dropped this comment. There's another issue that has come about in the last 48 hours. Another county here in North Carolina, it came up as a zoning ordinance. So perhaps I will end up speaking with Jen on my long drive later today to get more information about that.
Yep, and Jen, there's certainly been some people in North Carolina doing work, and Jen Davis is probably leading the way on that. So kudos to her. She was involved with that spitting cobra incident, and she already had connections with a lot of the counties and stuff from the work she's been doing for years. So, yeah, Jen Davis is certainly a valuable resource there in North Carolina.
Absolutely, for sure. So keeping going with what's going on, there's also ESA listing changes happening as well with turtles or tortoises. So what's going on with that?
Yeah, this is one of those we don't. We suspect this is going to get worse way before it ever thinks about getting better. So ESA is going to be a big issue for people who don't know that already. We've been talking about it for years now through USARK, but ESA is a Federal Endangered Species Act, and the one specifically right now, and actually the comment deadline is coming up January 10th. So we've got the instructions on that, but it's on Egyptian tortoises, which is a species that's super cool. I mean, they stay small, about the size of our American box turtles, and just super good species to keep. You know, they're not the big monsters like sulcatas, and they're going to be listed under the Endangered Species Act. And when that happens, it doesn't matter if it's listed as threatened or endangered. It makes it illegal to sell even captive-born animals across state lines. Wow. And the only way it's possible is if you get what's called a captive bred wildlife permit from FWS. And both the seller and the buyer have to have that permit. And FWS hasn't been issuing those to private parties for years now, going on about 6 or 7 years. So the only people who can even get those CBW permits are AZA zoos. We've had veterinarians deny their CBW permits. The last private keeper who was able to get a renewal, which he's had a CBW for years, he actually had to have 2 members of his state legislature, a federal legislator, and he had an attorney fill out the form. And he finally got his renewal. But again, it's crazy. And 99% of private keepers are just denied. So you may have been breeding a species for 20 or 30 years or working with them, or someone else was breeding them for that long. If they get listed under ESA, then you're no longer allowed to sell those animals across state lines.
Yeah, that just happened a couple of years ago, or was it 2 years ago, with the Poecilotheria species, the tarantulas.
Yep.
Was it 5 species of Poecilotheria? And it's like, it doesn't make any sense, because they're saying that it's to help protect these species, but they're saying, okay, you can't transport them across state lines where that's how people breed them, is they trade offspring to make sure they got good bloodlines, to make sure they can keep the populations going in captive settings. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, their arguments are nuts. And, the biggest argument, kind of the global argument, is that us breeding these animals increases the global population. I don't know how you can argue that making more of an endangered species is not conservation. And that's exactly what FWS says when they deny these CBW permits. They say that what we do by breeding more of these animals is not conserving the species. And it's one of those things that makes your head spin.
Yeah. It just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense at all. Yeah, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Like, these conservation efforts that already do exist, you're just going to make it that much harder for them to continue.
Yep, and the reason it's a big deal, I know not a lot of people work with Egyptian tortoises, but we never know what species is going to be next. And these species get petitioned by animal rights, or what we call enviro groups, the groups that do more fundraising than actual good for any animals. And
yep.
any one of those groups can write a petition for any species. So, I mean, they could write a petition for ball pythons to be listed under ESA. I mean, they could literally pick any species out. It doesn't have to be a U.S. native species, which is another issue we have with the Endangered Species Act. But again, we don't know what's going to be next. So this petition was actually sent to FWS way back in 2015. And they're just now getting around to doing something about it. And what they're proposing to do is list them as threatened. And FWS even has the authority So only for threatened species under ESA, they can still allow us to breed the animals and sell them across state lines freely through something called a 4D rule. So if enough people write in, we got a better chance, obviously, at getting that special 4D rule. But we don't know that it's going to happen.
And then also, Egyptian tortoises are really small as well, right? So the federal ban on chelonia with turtles under 4 inches affects them for the majority of their life.
Yeah, it's
so it boils down to. So like,
yeah, who knows? 3 or 4 years before they even get that size. Yeah.
It's just they try to set up as many obstacles as they can to make it so you can't work with these animals.
Yep. And we've been waiting about the same time. I'd have to check if it was 14 or 16. I think it was a year before, after all the spider tortoises were proposed to be listed under ESA.
Yeah.
And there's another tortoise species that was proposed about the same time that they're waiting on too. So, they're getting around to this stuff about 6 years later. And again, we don't know what's going to come this year. It could be something that you're keeping. So that's why it's important to, comment on the species, even if you're not involved with that species.
Yeah, I'm seriously bummed about the tarantula ones, because a lot of those tarantulas are tarantulas that I keep, and it's like just restricting the flow of the movement of those animals in a captive setting when they haven't been imported for years doesn't do any good for that species in the long term.
Yeah, there's tons of arguments against it. We've kind of got them broken down, but yeah, as Rob's saying, it just really does not make sense. It causes a genetic bottleneck because you can still trade the species within a state. So if you're breeding Egyptian tortoises in Florida, you can sell those in Florida just fine. So intra-state, but you can't sell them across state lines. So what that creates is all the breeders in Florida can only exchange with each other and buy each other's animals. They can't get something that's not as closely related from the other side of the country, because it's illegal to buy that animal and import it from Washington State or wherever it may be. So yeah, just so many issues. And as we usually say, I mean, ESA just needs to be modernized, because, ESA in 1973, obviously over the course of 50 years, a lot of things have changed, and people were breeding these animals 50 years ago like they are now. And ESA just never modernized. So yeah, FW just needs to do some work on that.
Yeah, I mean, that's an overall issue that we've seen with the government too, is that so many things have changed in the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, but the way that a lot of these regulations are written initially does not account for all the changes that we've made. It's like in Massachusetts. Massachusetts is one of the few exceptions I can think of where they changed the laws to be better because of the advances that were made when they made green tree pythons and emerald tree boas and chameleons legal. Because when I was growing up, chameleons and green tree pythons and emerald tree boas were all illegal, and I had to get permits for them, which was a pain in the butt to do. But after eventually going through all the shenanigans and whatnot, they finally made them legal. But it took up until 6 years ago, 7 years ago, something like that. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice that they realize that some things could change and be okay, whereas some states aren't coming to that conclusion. Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For real.
no, it's definitely true. And I think on that point, Rob, one of the things that definitely helped with that was the New England Herpetological Society having such a solid relationship with Mass Fish and Wildlife to be able to revisit some of those regulations. And I think the power of an organization like that, to have that kind of relationship really does go a long way. And that's definitely a hopeful goal that I have for the Carolina Herp Society as well, is to be able to get that kind of relationship happening. So when these things do pop up, it doesn't take a whole lot to knock on somebody's door and say, hey, we need to talk about this, because that would make a world of difference, being able to sit in the room with somebody that's sponsoring a regulation change or something like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And NEHS, the New England Herp Society, that's even mentioned a lot of times in the alerts that I get. So a lot of times it's just that a regulation is renewing or whatever. It's nothing that we have to put out an alert for, but it will mention the list that the New England Herp Society supplied to state agencies to make animals that were legal or not. So yeah, certainly a herp society, again, as long as you're networking and lobbying and doing all that stuff that isn't much fun, unfortunately, but making those relationships in the state wildlife agencies, any group, it doesn't matter what you're called, can have an effect, positive effect like that. So again, good luck to Carolina Herp Society.
Definitely appreciate that. So what going into 2022, I mean, we touched on where the beginning of the year, right around tax time, is when we would usually start to see new proposals start to come through. Have you heard or gotten wind of anything that we might be seeing from any particular state or federally that we might want to be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're seeing with the uptick in a lot of places on COVID cases. COVID is obviously still going to be the hot topic. The only thing we see, and it happened last year already, and the year before, is trying to sneak something in that will affect us that's under the guise of a COVID relief bill or some type of related bill, like they tried to repeal our federal lawsuit victory in one of the first COVID relief bills that would have made it illegal to ship injurious species across state lines again. So federally certain we may see something like that, fall under some 600-page omnibus bill or something. But other than that, these traveling animal acts are that's what's really been hot the last 5 or 6 years. The animal rights groups are just pushing those all over the place, and we really got to watch those. Those haven't passed that have affected herp keepers yet, but they keep coming at us. So all of them that have included reptiles and amphibians have been stopped. So there are some of those traveling animal act bills that have passed, especially at the city level, at the local levels, but they've really been targeted really at circus species, tigers, lions, bears, elephants. There haven't been any that really impacted the educational programs that we do. So as long as we keep fighting those off, sooner or later, they'll probably just stop including the reptiles in there because they know it's harder for them to get those passed.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm not shocked to hear that that's the kind of stuff that we'll be seeing, just because it's already been such a popular thing that's been brought up numerous times over the last few years, especially.
Yeah, and especially. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to quickly. It's the same group doing it. I mean, the federal bill, the Federal Animal Act ban, is identical to state bills that came up in Oregon and North Carolina. Last year now in 2021. I mean, the wording is all identical. So obviously it's the same group who wrote it. So sorry, Rob.
Yeah. No, it's all good. I was just going to say that, especially with the popularity of Tiger King and then more of Tiger King coming out. And then I've been hearing rumors that there's a Cobra King in the making, that reptile people are talking to the same people who filmed this stuff to make some sort of reptile hobby one. It just does not bode well for, our hobby in general.
Yeah, I don't know when it's going to hit, but yeah, there's some type of reptile Tiger King spinoff coming. They were actually filming down at Daytona. So, if it airs or when, we don't know yet, but yeah, there's something in the works.
Yeah. I think it's really important. I just recently went on a social media tangent about some of this stuff, but I think it's really important that we realize, everything that we do that ends up in the public eye, really does need to be paid attention to. The reptile keeping, captive reptile keeping, even though it's more popular than 20, 30 years ago, is still very much taboo to the general public. So if you're a social media person, you're posting YouTube content, posting Instagram content, whatever, I think it's important that you're aware that you're representing something that is taboo, to the larger population. So anything that we post that could potentially put us in a negative light, really, it doesn't do anything but put us in a more negative, more twisted light, because people are like, oh my God, you keep snakes, you keep lizards, what are you doing, you weirdo? So you mix that with, erroneous nonsense content and it's not. It just doesn't work out well for us, And to anybody that tries to combat that, I would just say check out some of those virtual meetings and look at what some of the photos are in some of those slides. There's screenshots from YouTube videos. There's screenshots of pictures and stuff. And
Yeah.
So what we post makes a difference.
It's hard not to. I know, obviously when you get a social media following, it's when you sensationalize it, it usually adds to your following. But, Jeremy just said it. I've been in numerous state and local meetings where, again, they will show a screenshot of, a popular reptile YouTuber and say, this is what these guys do. This is what these guys are all about. And of course, it's going to be some screenshot that makes us look absolutely horrible. And it's hard to get 100% away from that content. But again, it may be working for you, but it can reflect badly on the community.
Right. Absolutely. And I'm looking at our timestamp, and I need to make sure that I do this. We need to I need to get myself into the mindset. We have a wonderful sponsor for the podcast this year. So we're going to take a quick 90-ish second break for that plug. So hang tight, guys. Black Box Cages, located in Buford, Georgia, is your one-stop shop for all of your caging and rack needs. Owners Jen and Clint are at the helm of this fantastic company. With one of the shortest lead times in cage and rack manufacturing, Black Box can satisfy anyone's needs. From baby racks to V70s, arboreal and terrestrial caging to deep-fronted bioactive enclosures. You can find everything you need right here. New enclosure sizes and products are added frequently to their availability, so be sure to check back often. Black Box Cages have tons of customizing options for lighting and heating. Along with that, cages and racks can be stacked with metal stacking dowels, and all cage joints are dadoed for improved durability and stability. Most cage units are flat-packed, but are pre-assembled prior to shipping to ensure a solid build every time. The Micro, XC18, XT3, Bio-G, and 3-stack V70 ship assembled, and all other racks are shipped freight and assembled. The XR16 and XR20 model racks allow keepers to mix and match tubs. Fitting both Vision and Freedom Breeder tubs, you can mix the V15, V18, and V35S tubs, or the FB5, FB8, and FB35CV-SC tubs. This kind of flexibility allows keepers to raise their animals from hatchling to juvenile or subadult size before needing to upgrade into adult caging. Don't just take our word for it. Go to their website to see countless customer reviews and review videos from keepers all over. To learn more about Black Box Cages, follow them on Facebook and Instagram at Black Box Cages, and of course their website, www.blackboxcages.com. Links to their socials and website will be available in the podcast description. Bam! Look at that. Woohoo! Shout out to Black Box Cages for sponsoring the podcast for all of 2022. I'm super excited to be working with them. Absolutely great cages, great people. So thank you.
Boom, a sponsor. You're fancy.
You're fancy.
Going. For me and Robert going places.
We're trying, man. We're trying. I mean, we did just go to North Carolina, but no.
True.
Oh man. No, but we're definitely very excited about it. Okay, so continuing forward, we've got all this stuff already in our midst. We have an idea of what we want to just be on the lookout for. So again, I will say make sure you're following USARK. Just go to usark.org. Sign up for that newsletter. Follow them all over social media. It's not hard. Phil is the spoon-feeding master of information.
I'm not sure that's a good title. I don't know.
There could be worse titles, dude. There could be worse titles. I'm just saying. But seriously, like all of that work has been done for us, so there really is no excuse. It's so accessible for us to be able to get involved. So I think it's important to always do this, just because there, for amazing reasons that I will never understand, still things that get brought up to this day, and we usually talk about it a little bit. Dispelling USARK myths. What is going
Yes.
on with USARK?
My favorite portion of every show. Wait, I got one. I got one that I forgot about last time.
Okay, all right, tell us.
It came across my radar that there was a person saying that he or she just wanted to start a nonprofit group so they could pay herself a salary, and that's not how USARK works. So I'm under no contract. We have a board of directors. I could be fired at any time. USARK was not some invention that I came up with just to take donations and then pay myself a salary. That's not exactly how all this works. So again, if someone comes along who can do this better than me, they can go to the board. I may get a different position with USARK, but this isn't some type of scheme where I just collect donations and pay myself a salary. So that's
Wow.
one reason.
Oh man.
Form of silliness that came across somewhere. But yeah, any other ones that you guys have heard, I'll be more than happy to get into it, because I know there is some misinformation out there. Not all of it's that extreme. But yeah. If you guys got anything, I'll be more than happy to address it.
I think one of the biggest ones that pops into my brain is right after the North Carolina alert went out, there was a comment on Facebook that said, USARK will not do anything else to help us. They're just going to make this social media post. So Phil, are you just a keyboard warrior? Do you just make social media posts?
Yeah, I never speak up at any of these hearings or do any of that stuff or fly places and speak. But I mean, to address that a little bit, even if USARK did do that, even if we did all we could, again, I cannot express how important. There's got to be people in the state or the city, wherever that is, who speak up, because if USARK is the only organization or person saying anything, again, it's going to pass and just blow through. They really got to hear from people within that state, especially when we're dealing with legislative stuff, because USARK isn't based in South Carolina or Montana or Texas or wherever that may be. So those legislators don't want to hear from us. We can educate them on the facts and the science on whatever's going on, but unless there are people within the state who are speaking up, USARK's voice is probably going to be dismissed. Sometimes it only takes a handful of people, but every situation is a little bit different. And obviously, the more people speaking up, the better it is. So to take what that person said, even if USARK threw everything we could at it, if no one in the state steps up and all they're doing is complaining about USARK on social media rather than following through with our alert, yeah, they're absolutely right. And whatever it is going to pass. So, it's up to the people to do more than complain on social media.
Yeah, I think that is one of the biggest things that I see, is just a lot of social media complaining and then a lack of actual action. And I don't know if their image of you is this holier than thou entity that floats in on a cloud and says, "You shall not pass," and then you float back away to wherever you're from. But yeah, it's absolutely like, people need to show up. People need to speak. We've talked about this a bunch of times, and I've certainly gone on plenty of rants on my weekly Instagram lives about like getting people to show up. Obviously we want your voices to be heard, and sometimes we don't want certain voices to be heard, but we need the bodies in the room. The numbers also make an impact. Especially, we talked about, was that Rhode Island, Rob?
Yeah.
Where it was just like the number of people in the room was just like, who's here for this? In opposition of, everybody raised their hands.
20 hands go up. Yeah.
So sometimes numbers make a difference too. So even if you're not comfortable with public speaking, but you've got the time, you can show up to a meeting, or jump on a Zoom call. That extra square means a lot on the screen. That full chair makes a big difference in the hearing room.
Yeah, and you don't want to wait till the hearing. A lot of work goes in before that. That's why it's important to do the phone calls and emails. And, Rob saw it. Jeremy, I can't remember if you were there or not, but when that Traveling Animal Act ban got stopped in Massachusetts, there were so many people showed up, they couldn't fit in the room. I mean,
I remember that.
seriously,
Yeah,
it was
I was
like
there for
3 times the amount of people that could fit in that room. Everybody was out in the hallway, and we had to file in when it was our turn to speak, and that thing got shot down right there. But, I mean, there was some work that went into it too. Even one of the co-sponsors said, I didn't know what I was signing on as a co-sponsor as, and she actually pulled her co-sponsorship during that hearing. But again, when you get that many people showing up and, everybody spoke well, they weren't up there cussing at the legislators and doing all this stuff. But, that definitely has an impact. And something else to think about is USARK, this will be our best. Well, 2021 was our best year fundraising, but usually we're between $400,000 and $500,000, which sounds like a lot of money. If someone's making that as a salary, that's a lot of money. But when you're an organization,
as an organization,
and all that money's going, through, we say 50 states, but frankly, it's not 50 states. We don't do work in Hawaii and, Puerto Rico, but, it is distributed across, the whole country. That money does not go very far. You got groups like HSUS who are, pushing $200 million, and even they only win a small percentage of the stuff they go into. So just because they propose a bill, I mean, most bills don't pass, but they just keep going at it. They'll bring it back year after year. And that's how they have success. But even when you're a group with $200 million, it doesn't mean you can just swoop in and say, hey, make this happen, and it happens. So realize that a group with $200 million has problems getting done what they want to get done, and compare that to a group with $400,000 and realize, for us to come in and be as successful as we have, I mean, it really, I'm not bragging about myself, I'm bragging about USARK, but it really is impressive because USARK is a heck of a lot more than just me. So kudos to everybody who's been involved.
Absolutely. And that brings me to the next piece is how in the world is USARK only raising between $400,000 and $500,000? It seems like there's always a fundraiser going on. There's always something. There's always somebody collecting money for USARK. How is it that they only make X amount of money? And usually, I mean, my response goes to like, well, there's only a couple of expos that raise substantial amounts of money, and then the rest of it is like memberships and donations and everything like that. And you might think a $10,000 fundraiser is, bam, that's a lot of money, and it's great that it goes right there. But, the reality is that $10,000 might hit the account Monday and be gone Monday night, So Phil, where's all the money go?
Yeah. And some of those, I mean, you can add up the numbers. Well, we have our 990 IRS tax forms all on our website. So you can go and look at those and see how much money we brought in. But I mean, if you just do some simple math, I mean, really every year we only have about 8 or 9 big auctions, and we'll just say those average $20,000. That's less than $200,000 right there. And then unfortunately, sometimes you got to spend money to make money. So at every one of those auctions, we got to pay for a little bit of catering and the room to have the event. And there's expenses that go into all those. So some of that stuff is just, again, it's money. If we didn't pay for the room, we couldn't have the auction. So what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
And anybody who's ever worked with a hotel on any type of event, I mean, it's just crazy the amount of money these places get. And then plus you always pay like a 28% gratuity tax on top of it. So I mean, it's crazy. Obviously, we try and keep it as inexpensive as we can, but all that stuff adds up. So just because we have, even at NARBC, just because we had a $50,000 auction, again, there's some expenses that go out of that and to put those on. And every year, a huge chunk comes from ZooMed. ZooMed donates over $100,000 every year. So honestly, since USARK started, they're like $1.5 million in to help USARK up and going. So, and then as far as where the money goes, obviously I'm getting a salary. This is a full-time job. And again, that's all in the 990s. Nobody from the board makes any money. Actually, 2 members from the board provide, pushing half of our revenue some years between ZooMed and Timberline. Both those companies donate huge to USARK. And then, if we get involved in any legal battles, I mean, attorneys are today $400 plus an hour. I mean, it's crazy what attorneys make. I mean, when you're spending money at $400 an hour, it goes away awfully quick. I mean, our federal lawsuit, which luckily we had an attorney who did the bulk of the work who was billing at $350 an hour. But yeah, that federal loss, we blew past $600,000 without blinking. I mean, I don't know what the final number was, but I mean, it was well over $500,000 on that federal lawsuit.
Jesus.
So yeah, it goes away quick. If we get a state lobbyist for a certain issue, that's $25,000 or $35,000. So, I mean, again, the numbers are just big when you got to pay them out. And then obviously, preferably, we would always like to have at least $250,000 in the bank so that if we did ever have to move forward with another federal lawsuit, we already have the money there.
Mm-hmm.
Our first federal lawsuit, honestly, we were paying as we went. It wasn't there. We made the decision. We're going to file this lawsuit and we're going to make it happen. And luckily the community stepped up and, supported us monetarily so that we could prevail in that. But yeah, the money goes away quick. So again, it sounds like a lot of money, but at the end of the day, it's really not for an organization working on the scale that we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, probably way too many words there.
No, but I mean, those are the questions that I've heard people ask, is where does that money go? How can they only be achieving X number of dollars a year? That they've got to be doing other things, it's interesting. It is definitely interesting. So I've also heard less rumor wise about USARK, but just around the topic of USARK, like ball python people won't get involved because ball pythons are never in danger. And I mean that's not real. Ball pythons are just as in danger as anything else. And I mean we need the bigger ball python breeders who are out there buying Corvettes and doing all this other wonderful stuff to to step up, and in many cases they do, but to know that people already have this stigma of like certain parts of the industry are less willing to be involved because they feel like they're untouchable. I think that's not real.
So I don't know how this is going to go over. One of those times I should probably keep my mouth shut, but
go Phil, go.
But I've seen that a lot from, I mean, let's be honest, usually it's the big snake guys calling out the ball python guys. Mm-hmm. And I can assure any person, whether you're a big snake guy or not, who has called out the ball python guys, that the ball python guys have contributed more money to USARK than the snake guys. So now, certainly going back to Jeremy's point, there are what do we have? Thousands of ball python breeders. There are certainly plenty who aren't doing much or just really started contributing in the last year or two. But yeah, overall, even with that federal lawsuit, the ball python guys were stepping up just as big or bigger than the big snake guys. So to say that is kind of nonsense. But again, it's two ways. So one, the ones who have supported us always step up big from the ball python world. But yes, certainly there are others who could be doing a little bit more, or at least starting to even donate a little. So, but yeah, plenty of ball python guys are huge supporters, especially down in Texas at the Texas NARB show. NARB shows, the ball python guys step up at every auction. They donate big. They bid a lot, buy a lot of things. So thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's always interesting watching the fingers get pointed and not allowing that person to reflect on their part of the industry.
Yeah, and one guy I'll mention him just because he always donates. Honestly, sometimes it's $4,000 or $5,000 worth of ball pythons at an auction. But Bailey and Bailey Reptiles, Tim.
Oh yeah,
actually felt bad. So back when USARK, when I became president, we used to try and send out after each auction who donated. And somehow Bailey and Bailey got left off like 2 or 3 of those in a row. And he's like, man, I donated $4,000 worth of ball pythons and you don't even put my name in the newsletter. And every time I'd apologize and be like, man, I'm sorry. And he kept donating. And he gave me a hard time about it. And honestly, if I was him, I might have just said, man, I'm not donating to USARK anymore. But he's still a huge supporter and kept on going. And yeah, he let me hear about it, but we deserved it. So thanks.
That's funny, man. Damn. Let's see. I'm trying to think if there's one more notable one that kind of pops into my mind. Oh well, I mean, I guess there's certainly the one. Everything's just gonna get banned, so we might as well just it's just going to happen. So we might as well just, get used to it. They're never going to stop coming for us. So we just need to, whatever. I had a conversation with an old school reptile keeper who lives actually out by your side of the state, Rob. And that was very much his standpoint. He's like, I've been fighting for 20 years or whatever. And, I'm tired. It always seems like we're losing. And my conversation with that person was literally like, hey, man, you still keep snakes, right? That means you still enjoy what you're doing. So all this time you just wasted sending me, 30 messages about how old you are. You could have sent out a few emails or made a few phone calls, and that would have been a lot better, a much better use of your time. So, Phil, why are we just rolling over and taking this? What's the deal?
Here's one thing that's silly about that. Again, so USARK doesn't win 100% of the time, and I don't know what the percentage is, but in every effort that we've gotten into, it's 90 to 95% of the stuff we either stop or get the regulation changed or something. It's a very small percentage of times that we have actually lost. So when people say that, if you want to dwell on the losses, that's fine. But overall, it's a heck of a lot closer to 100 than it even is to 60 or 70%. So, that's somebody who's just frustrated. I don't know. That's getting outside the reptile world. That's someone who's upset with his own life and isn't happy with where his life went and has other issues going on. It's nothing to do with USARK or reptiles. That's just, what he or she chooses to vent and say that he or she is miserable because of USARK. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that stuff happens. And obviously, if you are someone who was actually negatively affected at a time when USARK didn't win, I understand you being upset with USARK. But again, what did that person do? Did you try and rally the troops? Did you try and get people involved? Did you yourself just take 5 or 10 minutes to call and send an email? At minimum, that should be what you're doing. So, and you see that too. A lot of people are complaining and do absolutely nothing but complain on Facebook.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's so much easier to just do that than copy and paste an email. It's so much easier to write a long social media paragraph that 5 people will bother reading, rather than clicking copy paste.
Not spending 2 or 3 hours complaining when you could have done something productive to help the fight in that 2 or 3 hours. Anyway, it is. That's just how some people are. Some people are wired.
Yeah.
And one thing, it's kind of USARK related. I always hate people to talk about how bad the reptile industry is and how there's all this negative stuff with the reptile industry. I really don't like to hear that because, that's not the reptile industry. It's just people as a whole. You're always going to get people who are complaining, and it doesn't matter if you're into, radio controlled cars or drones or playing magic card game. It doesn't matter what you're in. There's always going to be some people who you don't like and who are bad for the community. So yeah, I just really never like hearing people just rip on the reptile community specifically, thinking that outside the reptile world, everything is, rainbow farting unicorns. That's not the case.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So Phil, I wanted to ask if there's any, I know that we already touched on the North Carolina's got meetings coming up. Are there any imminent things that people should know as we're wrapping things up? Just most important things that people should be looking at right now. Probably that the federal traveling ban. People in North Carolina should be aware of the stuff that's going on in North Carolina in the upcoming week. Anything else?
No, since Jeremy brought it up, honestly, anybody in North and South Carolina should certainly look at the New Carolina Herp Society because, like Jeremy said, any state just building some type of society like that is going to help so much going down the line. It may take a year or 2 or 3, to kind of get organized, but, feel free to go out and kind of start a group like that because what, a group like that is going to be able to do is they can give easy access to state regulations, to members. They'll develop relationships with people in the state wildlife agency. Sometimes, and I know we've talked about this before, people ask if they should have a state USARK group, and I always say no. Most states honestly should not have any type of ARC organization. It's a whole lot better to start a herp society or similar group and just have, an organized group of people in case something does happen. But it shouldn't be based around some type of lobbying. organization. It should be something where you can go out and
Community.
enjoy some of the time and build a community.
Yeah. Community is so important when it comes to reptiles. And I was just thinking, Jeremy, I got to talk to you about this, but doing some group field herping trips, because some of the spots that I've been going to recently, they're not even like private areas. It's all public trails that I've been to recently. But I found lots of really cool stuff. So, and I'm more than happy to like bring people out there with me and share a little bit of that experience. And, I've only been down here for a month, but I'm sure that if we get together with a few more people, we can, figure out some stuff to do trips and whatnot. Yeah,
absolutely, Rob. Get people off their asses and stop staring at their phones and go out and do stuff.
For real.
Less social media complaining and more field herping.
Yeah, I'm about it. That needs to be on a bumper sticker.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so there's a question in the chat I just want to bring up, but I know we're wrapping things up, but I think this is a valid question. And this comes from Dan Lawyer. Should Texas keepers make an effort to propose laws before they are made? So I guess in states that don't really have any regulations, is it worth them being proactive in some sort of way before they get sideswiped?
Yeah, there's pros and cons to being proactive. Being proactive can bring up a conversation that you don't want to have brought up, and it's also going to bring the other side of the table. So while it can make sense, so again, it's pretty long-winded to get into all this. I'll try and be brief, but being proactive isn't always good. And I would say a state like Texas is maybe one of those states, because Texas is not an over-regulatory type of state. It's the true last land of the free and home of the brave kind of place, whereas certain other parts of the country aren't that way. So there are certainly other states where maybe you want to look at something like that. But Texas already has a large snake and venomous regulation, a permit that you have to have. So depending on what this person is thinking about specifically on being proactive on, because he or she may be talking about some field herping change and not necessarily keeping reptiles change. So it's too much to get into. So yeah, the short story is proactive can be good, but you really still got to be organized to be proactive, because animal rights groups are going to come to it. And to even get a bill sponsored and introduced, it's tough work. You got to have some type of political connections. The legislator has to see what the public interest is in doing that bill. So it takes a lot of work to be proactive. But yeah, depending on the situation, it would be good for some states or even cities to look at that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and you got to think about what the public interest is. What does the public know about reptiles?
Yeah.
I saw the movie Anaconda once, and then that's a wrap.
Yeah. It's between that and any good snake is a dead snake. If that's the
Texas.
General viewpoint of
Texas.
if that's the viewpoint of the people around you, maybe hold off.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get plenty of that in Texas too, and that's every state.
Man.
I live in Indiana, and every snake in the water is a cottonmouth, and obviously that's not the case. But that's almost every state. Every state has that, where the Nerodia are always a cottonmouth. Every Nerodia is a cottonmouth.
I've not even seen any cottonmouths since I've been down here. It's kind of sad.
It's okay. We'll fix that this year.
Oh, trust me. As soon as it's a viability, it's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we've gone past our time, but as always, Phil, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate you taking the time. I know your schedule is pretty crazy. So of course, again, I've already said it, but make sure you're following USARK. Just go to usark.org. Go right to that homepage, sign up for that newsletter, get all of the information. I've been using the hashtag in the know. We want keepers to be in the know about what is going on, so feel free to use that hashtag. And of course, check out USARK on Facebook, United States Association of Reptile Keepers, and on Instagram at USARK_official. I usually post all the tags on all my social media. Bam. Yeah. Heck yeah. That is that. So Phil, thank you again. Yeah, we'll stay in touch, of course. And I'll bug you in a few months about getting you back on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Thanks, fellas.
Thank you, man. Take care.
All right, take care.